So while the few very loud, obnoxious Snyder cultists are still gagging on Snyder's cucumber like they're Deborah Snyder, I'll offer you an extended olive branch. How about this? Since the possibility is very slim of James Gunn reviving the Snyderverse, I could see James Gunn maybe sometime down the line, maybe in a couple of years. Again, I'm being very, very optimistic of Justice League 2 happening in animation, because it sure as shit is never going to happen in live action. But in animation, I think it's very feasible. I'll put it that way. Now, we already know that Zack Snyder is dipping his toe into animation with Twilight of the Gods, which is supposed to come out on Netflix in the year 3045, because it's been radio silence ever since. What the hell is going on with that project? Also with his Army of the Dead animated verse, which centers around the black character in Army of the Dead. Again, what's going on with that project? I don't know. Is it even happening on Netflix? We shall see, since Netflix is canceling everything. But it's like, okay, if Zack Snyder and James Gunn were to sit down, it's like, hey man, listen, I love the Snyderverse. The fans want it. I know it can never be done in live action because David Zaslav is not willing to spend that kind of money. Could it be done? Yes or no? Now, if we lived in a DC Elseworld story, I feel like the only way Zack Snyder can conclude his story, his Justice League Part 2 and Part 3 in animation, is if Rebel Moon is highly, highly successful for Netflix, especially with the Army of the Dead animated series or movie, whatever it is, and the Twilight of the Gods movie. And if Rebel Moon is a big success, especially with Rebel Moon animation and video games and comics, I feel like Zack Snyder would have leverage, especially since, you know, he'll garner a whole new fan base if Rebel Moon is very successful. And I think he can take that over to Warner Brothers, because I do think Zack Snyder will work for Warner Brothers one day. He will go to James Gunn because they're friendly at the very least, and be like, hey man, listen, I want to do this for my fan base. I love the Snyderverse. I want to conclude my story. Could this be done in animation? And I feel like James Gunn would oblige him, because it wouldn't be very expensive at all. And I think it would be a nice closure for Zack Snyder and the fan base. And you also have to consider, mind you, this is a long shot, but you also have to consider many factors like, would Ray Fisher work under James Gunn? Because James Gunn would oversee Zack Snyder's project. That's number one. Will Ben Affleck return to voice? I don't know. Will Henry Cavill return to work again under James Gunn, especially since he was embarrassed by the previous regime as Superman? Would he want to, I hate to say this, but waste his time in playing Superman again? I don't know. So again, even me making this video, there are so many variables that are working against me on Zack Snyder returning in animation. But again, if we lived in a perfect world, if Henry Cavill agreed, if Ray Fisher agreed, if Ben Affleck agreed, then I think that would be one viable way to get Zack Snyder Justice League in animation. But again, there's so many variables that are working against it. I don't see it happening. And me making this video is a complete waste of time. But again, if we lived in fantasy land, I think that would be the only way for Justice League Part 2 and Part 3 to happen, is if the Rebel Moon universe is successful on Netflix, if his animated projects are successful, and Zack Snyder working with Warner Brothers once again, and working and being friendly with James Gunn. I feel like Zack Snyder would make that pitch to James Gunn to do it in animation form. But again, there are so many variables working against it. I don't see how it's possible. But hey, you guys let me know. As always, truth out.
You get in that goddamn shower, hit the bar of soap, put a little water on it, and rub it all underneath your armpits, around your balls, and your fucking asshole, would you smelly prick? Here's a tube of toothpaste. What you do is you pour some of this out on a little toothbrush, and you scrub them fucking gimmicks in your mouth. They're called teeth. Get all that yellow shit off of them. Your breath don't smell like a motherfucker. You understand what I'm saying? Deodorant. It's a miracle worker. You put it under your fucking armpits. You get me? You fucking Viking. Last but not least, your old trusty hairbrush. This thing does a goddamn wonders if you got the fucking hair. I ain't got no fucking hair. Comb that fucking shit you call a wig. You understand me?